I believe that moves us to committee reports. And before I ask Julie Barr to report out, let me just ask, is there anybody that is planning on spending more than 5 minutes in their report? Great. Julie Barr.
Thanks, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I've been asked to report out on 2 of the core volunteer groups that make up the half dozen groups within the CEC. I'm going to start with the Peninsula Humane Society and then move to the Medical Reserve Corps. And Mike, just to give you a heads up, when I get to the MRC portion, I'd like to be able to share my screen, if that's okay.
Yes.
Okay. So the 4 things everybody needs to know about the Peninsula Humane Society Disaster Response Group is that, first of all, it's alive and well, and it continues to hold monthly radio test drills amongst its members, both on the coast side and on the other side of the hill within San Mateo County. And I think those have been very successful in ensuring that in case of an actual disaster, we can reach each other. We're using some outdated but relatively effective push to talk flip phone technology to do that. So it doesn't rely on more conventional and modern broadband, et cetera, to reach each other in case phone lines are down. The other activity that we were called upon to participate in was the potential evacuation of people in the CZU fire zone based on the anticipated high rainfall totals that were expected in the early part of February. So PHS members were actually never called up, but we were alerted and placed on standby in case anybody needed help in sheltering their small animals during debris flow necessitated evacuations. And then the third thing is the disaster team continues to do its virtual quarterly trainings that rotate around a variety of topics relevant to disaster preparedness and animal care and evacuation in case of a disaster. We're all looking forward to getting back to our in-person trainings because we felt like those hands-on trainings, setting up shelters and whatnot, were extremely valuable. So that's all I had to report on for the Peninsula Humane Society Disaster Response Team. Any questions or comments around that?
Julie, I do have a question, and that is for the Peninsula Humane Society, what would you say are the biggest needs that you either need from the community or from other organizations or from us?
Well, I think this is common to all the organizations, Mike, is the need to have a pre-existing system in place to facilitate communication between organizations. I mean, we've only been practicing how to communicate within our own organization, but we all recognize how vulnerable we are with that kind of siloed model. And historically, the way that PHS, the disaster response team, has been activated has been very top down. You know, somebody at PHS waits to get a call from somebody at OES, but honestly, I don't know that that's ever been tested virtually or in any sort of tabletop simulation exercise. And I think, you know, in case of an actual disaster, all of our ability to function effectively is going to be interagency dependent, and so that seems to be lacking. To take nothing away from all the good work that the Humane Society is doing, but I really feel like they're kind of operating in a communications vacuum, and they haven't really been actively brought into that piece of the process.
Thank you, Julie. And if you do think of anything else, we are sending out follow-up to this meeting so that requests from agencies for, what they need from us, from the community, can be included in the proceedings from this meeting.
If I could just make one suggestion, Mike, since you're going to be doing that at a formal level, it might be useful for you to reach out directly to Brian Probst and Katie Deneen at PHS and say, is there anything that we can do to help you facilitate communicating with the other pieces of a disaster response? Because I really don't know what they know and how they're prepared to look at that. All of our communication exercises have been within the organization and just calling up the volunteers.
Great advice, Julie. And I would encourage anybody else that's reporting out, if you believe there's someone we should reach out to directly, please let us know, and we're happy to do that. Julie, I have it set up where I believe you can share. If you have any problems, there's one other setting. So
okay, let me
let's try it.
Get to.
I can see it.
There. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is where we are with resurrecting the Medical Reserve Corps within San Mateo County. Just as a brief refresher for those of you who haven't been living and breathing this topic, is that, as you know, there was a Medical Reserve Corps chapter here on the coast many years ago that was quite active and robust, and that dissolved for a variety of reasons, most notably a lack of infrastructure and administrative support. The CEC, and specifically Michael Akana and I and Sharice McKeon, have been working with Harrison Steins and other people at the County Health Department who in the last few years have seen a real need for a countywide San Mateo countywide Medical Reserve Corps to be put in place. And so because the Coastside had the most sophisticated model in existence compared to other MRC groups throughout the county, they called upon us to help them develop this. So that's what we've been working on for the last 2 years. I would say in the last 6 to 9 months, the pandemic notwithstanding, we've made tremendous headway with the help of Harrison Steins, who's been the county health department coordinator assigned to facilitate this process. And so where are we in that process? So we've been meeting on a monthly basis with Harrison and other people from the county and other stakeholder groups to move this forward. And we've made some huge progress that I may have alluded to, I can't recall, during our January meeting, but more has come to fruition in the last 2 months that I'd like to share with you. So the vision is to eventually develop community chapters of the Medical Reserve Corps throughout San Mateo County. So there would be 1 or more chapters here on the coast and throughout other parts of the county. And the county would provide the infrastructure to help these chapters survive, if not thrive, in their development and sustainability. And the MRC members would consist of interprofessional groups of healthcare providers that are not limited to doctors and nurses and EMTs, but include pharmacists, mental health experts, social workers, et cetera, et cetera. So anybody you think might be involved directly in delivering healthcare during a disaster, we want to make sure that we're including those people in an MRC. So you have to make sure that you have pre-vetted and screened these people before you just let them sign up and join an MRC. And then they also need to undergo core competency trainings over time So what I wanted to share with you was the last slide deck, which is only 4 slides long here, of the where we are with this. And I'm going to jump ahead. So first of all, the county has created a web portal for people to apply online to become MRC members. And this is called Image Trend. And so this is a one-stop shop for creating an applicant file. And then in addition, they also have, they're using the same portal that they're currently using to do background checks on other healthcare providers that work with the county, like EMTs and firefighters, et cetera, and police officers, to do background checks on individuals and to verify their licensure is intact and that they're in good standing, et cetera, et cetera. They don't have federal warrants out for their arrest, things like that, that might make you think twice before having them be an MRC member. And so that's what Image Trend and another piece of software does. And then once you're in the MRC, then they have a very robust training platform where you can create and track, you can create and deploy training modules for members and track their compliance with keeping up on whatever their required training would be. And this might be very specific to their baseline background. So for instance, doctors might have a different set of competency training modules to complete than a social worker would. One thing I failed to mention up front here is none of this would be possible if it hadn't been for the fact that the county was ultimately successful about a month and a half ago with applying for and becoming recognized as an MRC chapter by the national MRC. And once they have thrown holy water on your application process and said, yes, you're legitimate, then the access to these web platforms becomes available to you. So MRC Train was actually developed by the national platform. So where are we going forward? So the county already has a couple of databases that come from a variety of sources with people who are already signed up as disaster healthcare workers within the state, but whom reside within San Mateo County. And also they're going to be putting out announcements using kind of a multimedia approach in the next couple of months, inviting other people to join as well. Harrison Steins, the coordinator, will be presenting all of this information at the upcoming Coastside Keep meeting in May, the first Friday of May. I believe it's May 7th. So for those of you who attend the monthly Keep meetings, you'll be able to learn even more than what I've shared with you tonight. And then ultimately, we are also putting together a survey to do a countywide needs assessment, because we recognize that different communities have different healthcare needs in a disaster, and we want to make sure that we're not creating or assuming that a one-size-fits-all model works for everybody countywide. And then finally, we have that MRC trailer that has some pre-existing supplies. We're going to continue to work with the county. They've already applied for some grant funding to expand our trailer fleet and to restock the trailers and maintain the trailers. So nothing really but good news to report, Michael.
Excellent. Thank you, Julie. I had a few notes on the meeting, and you hit on everything I had down. So appreciate that. Did want to just also acknowledge we've had some additional participation. And I should say thank you, Dr. Juliana Barr. Additional participation has included Dr. Paul Feldman, Dr. Vic Froelicher, both at meetings, and also they've been helpful in reviewing some of the documents, especially related to the application. And I'm sure I'm missing others, but Chief Cosgrave, for example, had some great input, especially as we were talking about activation and other things that he's had firsthand experience with that we're looking to the future to plan.
Yeah, one thing, Mike, I forgot to mention, which has been on everybody's mind who's been thinking about the MRC is the liability insurance issue. And the county actually has a plan for that as well, which sounds quite viable. So I think all the previous barriers to getting this rocket off the ground seem to be quickly going away.
I agree. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Mike.
Any questions for Julie on the Medical Reserve Corps? Julie, there were just a few things in the chat. I'll make sure that you get a copy of that after the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
If nobody else is insisting on going next, Chris Orman, would you like to report out on shelters and Red Cross?
Yes. Can you hear me now? Good.
I can hear you.
Well, you probably wish you couldn't, but I'd like to kind of discuss the things we've been doing during the final phases of the COVID-19 period. And so we really just starting, the items I'm going to cover are really just kind of starting since January 1. But we expect the COVID period to go on indefinitely. And so although we would like to return to normal operations, we don't plan on it for the time being. But here's the kinds of things we're doing. We're continuing to monitor the wildfire situation, and I see where there were some preliminary indications of wildfires coming up now already this year. Red Cross provided well over 1,000 hotel rooms to the CZU fire last year. And because we have what we call non-congregate shelters now, which means we put people up in hotels largely. We do operate congregate shelters, but with adequate spacing to protect people from spreading the virus. We also are aware of the new inundation maps that were being produced and distributed now for tsunamis. And in particular, our concern is whether some of our shelters, and they are located within the tsunami flood zone, inundation zone, and also we're concerned about the access routes, Highway 1 and 92, and 1 north and south of Half Moon Bay will be in those areas during the very rare inundation tsunamis that are predicted by these new maps. But that is a concern to us, and we're going to be doing that in the next few months to catch up with that. Meanwhile, Red Cross continues. We've had 30 volunteers work in the vaccine centers at the county and at the airport and other vaccine centers, helping with registration and monitoring people. And we've all been to the vaccine centers, I hope, by now. And you may have run across some of our volunteers. We are not doing the vaccinations themselves. We are continuing what we call the Sound the Alarm program. As many of you know, and we'll send this handout to you, the referral link, after the meeting. But the Sound the Alarm system initially was to install fire alarms, and we did something like 800 alarms in the county and several hundred on the coast side. Free fire alarms for people that needed fire alarms in their homes and other local areas. But what we've modified that to during the COVID period is we have a Sound the Alarm virtual education session program which permits people that want help in fire safety at home, creating an escape plan and preparing for their go bag for a fire, and any other actionable steps that they need to take in the event of an emergency. And we walked people through. This is on a virtual Zoom call kind of thing, or a some of the other systems that people have. We show you how to test your smoke alarms, create your plan, and talk to you about your special needs if you have special needs in your family. Those calls last about 30 minutes and can be done by phone call or video conference. So those are available for anybody on the coast or anywhere else in the county through Red Cross. And when the COVID-19 situation clears up enough to put volunteers back into homes and residences, we'll then start reinstalling fire alarms as requested. It's been a good program, and I think I saw something where nationwide we know that we've saved 800 families from fire destruction that they weren't protected from earlier in the last few months. So it does pay off, as you know, to have smoke alarms. Meanwhile, we're going to continue to finalize the list of shelters we have. There's some 15 shelters now on the coast side that have been identified and with agreements signed to permit their use by the county and Red Cross and others during the period when we need actual congregate shelters. That's been impaired because a lot of that process has been impaired because of the people that have the shelters that are what we call shelter sponsors, the organizations. They've been really diverted to COVID-19 situations too. So that's pretty much it. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them through the chat or in person here, Mike, depending on what you want to do.
Thank you, Chris. I'll just start with a comment. I attended a meeting where they did the sound the alarm, and that was very straightforward, easy to do. I was able to test my alarms, have an escape plan, and it was actually quite timely because I did need to demonstrate for an inspector that my alarms had been tested, and so I was quite confident. I also believe that they were asking if we needed new alarms, that that might be possible to have help with that. Is that true, Chris?
Yes, we would help them, but probably after the COVID-19 restrictions are lifted, because even though our people generally are protected, we don't want to just send people into people's homes unless we do all kinds of checks, and those are pretty hard to do. We'll just as soon wait for a few months. But if you want an alarm, you can request it, and we'll come back and do it.
Excellent. And I do have your one-page PDF, Sound the Alarm. So I can attach that to our follow-up of the meeting so everybody can get a copy of that.
Okay.
And there's a link on there, I believe, to a very simple form to request online Sound the Alarm session. Yes,
there's a link, there's a phone number, or a text situation, texting where you can get connected right away. And if there's any questions, people can call Jim Holly or me through the CEC.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Does anybody else have questions for Chris about shelters or Red Cross? Before we continue with committee reports, I'm guessing Mike McKeon probably has his mouth full, because last time I called on him in January, I timed it perfectly. Mike McKeon, I just wanted to ask, is there anything you wanted to share from County OES?
It's been a pretty busy couple months, actually. We've been continuing the mass vaccination sites, and as we've seen a drop off in state provided vaccines, what we've been kind of pivoting to, and what you may have seen in the communities, is a community-based vaccination strategy. So that's been really designed to target more of our vulnerable populations and getting out to areas where we've seen kind of a discrepancy between that social vulnerability index and the actual vaccines that we've been doing. That's the really big news out of the actual response phase from County OES. Some things that we're working on that are pertinent for you all. We are in the process of awarding a contract for our disaster debris management plan annexes. So that's going to be for each local jurisdiction, developing an annex to fit in with our county debris management plan. So that would be really relevant for, the coastside incorporated areas. And then, we're still working on wrapping up from CZU complex. We have a few properties that are still getting the debris cleared. We've been working really diligently with the state program and with Cal OES to get those properties through. And I think that's everything that I have to report out on. I'm more than willing to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing that I may be having a little bit of a problem with my audio. So please give me just a second.
It's better now. There's no longer any echo.
Can you hear me okay now? Thumbs up, because I have my speaker turned way down. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate the report. Let's see, Robin, do you have a report for a large animal evac? I do have a few notes here from Chris as well.
Hello, yeah, I have some stuff. Let's see, we've been pretty busy. We received our 501c3 in December, so that's new and exciting. We've been holding 1 to 2 monthly trainings. We're about ready to do a forms and SOP training coming up, and an animal handling. It'll be our second animal handling training that we've done with our group for this year. We're going to have a few of PHS team members join us in that animal handling, so we're super excited about that. Let's see. We've done 4 presentations to different groups. Pony clubbers. We did one for Woodside Fire and CERT and the ham people there just last weekend. We've been doing, I think we have 5 facilities that we visited in the last 2 months where we've gone and done walkthroughs and helped them put plans together for better preparedness and having their barns ready for evacuation or an emergency. What else have we? We received some scholarships from a program called the Halter Project, and we went to some trainings with them. We went to a fireland training and an all fire training. So about 10 or 15 of us got certified under that, got certificates for doing that. And then we also received, 3 of our members received certificates for decontamination. We went through the Halter Project, gave us the scholarships, and it was under a national group called CO3. They're an animal rescue group. And so they're putting together a national decontamination team. And so 3 of us went and got certified for that, as well as animal rescue course last week. What else have we been up to? We have 2 other animal handling trainings coming up. We have some more ham radio training coming up, and that's about it.
Thank you, Robin.
Mm-hmm.
There was a note from Chris Thorin and I'm going to be asking you about needs as well. But when I had asked her, she said, as far as needs from other groups, she thinks that just cross-functional awareness. We're officially adopted by the county now, so the mechanism for activation is smooth, but it is good for all groups to be aware of each other. But I guess in addition to that, is there anything that large animal evac needs from the community, from us, from other organizations?
I think it would be nice sometime to cross trade with other organizations and just be able, because it's nice to know your other groups and actually have worked together. We found that when we work with each other ahead of time, it runs smoother. So if I had my thing, I'd like to do an all coast training again. Another thing I forgot to tell everybody, we did get a storage container. We're ramping up for all our goods that we need for evacuation. We purchased 2 trailers, one for staging and one for holding, and we're outfitting all those with walkie-talkies and ham radios and things, antennas. So we're really putting what we need to evacuate together. We really, with the CZU, we made huge lists and we had quite a few large donors help us out. So those are some other things that'll be coming down the pike in the next couple of weeks arriving that we've ordered and put together.
Excellent. Thank you, Robin. Any other questions for Robin or discussion on large animal evac?
Mike?
Yes, Julie.
In case I'm not here for the end of the meeting, I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody to encourage the affiliated organizations within the CEC to participate in the upcoming Coastside Gives Day. I don't know if the deadline has passed for volunteer organizations to register, but last year's event was a huge success by all accounts in terms of fundraising from the community. So of course, large animal evac always rocks, and it doesn't surprise me that they had some large donors step up and help them. But I think for the other organizations, there's opportunities there to get at least some one-time starter funding from the community. And again, the Coastside Gives is on May 6th. It's a 24-hour period of time where members of our community can log into the website and donate whatever amount they want. It's tax deductible. There's nothing given in return that I know of. And they can select as many organizations they want to donate to for whatever amount they want to donate to. Harvey may have a better recollection of what last year's donations were, but my recollection was that it was well over $100,000. Do you remember, Harvey?
It was actually over $1 million.
Over $1 million. Thank you, Harvey. Yeah. So, and I think there was something like, I want to say about 35 organizations. I could be wrong on that number too. But they came from all stripes, and many of the organizations within CEC participated, but I didn't remember hearing anything from the CEC encouraging our core groups to register for that. So I think there's an opportunity there.
How do we register, Juliana?
You can go to the Coastside Gives website. I'm looking here for the URL. They sent out a free mailer to the community in the last week or two. I don't see, it's run by the Mavericks Community Foundation. And unfortunately, I don't see a URL. Maybe somebody else on this meeting has access to that or could do a quick Google search and put it in the chat room. But it's called Coastside Gives, a Coastside Day of Giving, May 6th, 2021. And it's a 24-hour event online.
Thank you.
It says it says 58 Coastside nonprofits need your help. That's in the brochure. So I don't know if there's an opportunity for groups, if they haven't already registered, to register, but it's worth looking into.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Robin. Anything else for Robin or large animal evac? I'd like to call on next. Let's see, Aries Amateur Radio. I see, is that Lee Copeland that's on? Do you have anything for us?
Well, hi, this is Lee, and we're reforming or trying to re-energize the Aries group here on the coast from a casual organization to a more of a formal functioning group. And that means we're working to get volunteers to sign up for specific training. If you can imagine, everyone expects hams to know all there is to know about message handling, message shifting data back and forth between the various served agencies. And we want to formalize that training to make sure we provide qualified communicators. It works in progress. We're excited to get the group organized and actually working. I'll probably be looking at connecting with Brian Marshall as far as activation processes ongoing into the future. That's what we have for now.
Great, thank you, Lee. And do we have anyone from SC4 Amateur Radio? Okay, how about any reports from CERT? Maybe starting with Coastside CERT. Any other reports from CERT, La Honda area, branch 3 and 4? I did have a note here on Coastside CERT that they're having another hybrid training. It's actually been amazing how they've been able to continue training during COVID. They're doing part of their training online, and then they have a hands-on on the 10th, April 10th, to complete their training. Very impressive. Okay, let's see. Looking at the main committees. I don't see anybody from DART, Disaster Airlift. There's nobody representing DART online currently, is there? I had talked to Marion Harris a few weeks ago. She was talking about a training that they were having, I think statewide, you know, we were talking about the possibility of using some of that content perhaps for a future meeting. Let's see, Harvey, do we see anyone else from City of Half Moon Bay? Harvey, maybe tell us anything we need to know.
Our staff is working diligently on completing the emergency operations plan. That, in case you didn't know, is not just for Half Moon Bay, but the entire coastside. And it'll include things like when we activate the EOC. This time we're going to try to make sure that organizations like the HAMS, CERT are integrated into the plan. We recognize the importance of these volunteer organizations. The other thing that's relevant is the City Council just had a priority setting session, and one of our 4 priorities is emergency preparedness, part of what we call health and safety. And under that rubric, we're going to have an action plan that's going to come back as to exactly what the City Council can do to help with emergency preparedness. That's going to be in May. So all I got.
Thank you, Harvey. Just as a note to everybody, I have muted a few people only because your feed is coming active while somebody else is speaking, and I don't believe you're intending to speak. So if you find yourself muted and you're having any difficulty unmuting when you want to, you know, please either activate your video, wave frantically, or say something in the chat. Okay, any other groups? Who have I missed in our committees? I think I've gone down the list. Any other groups wanting to report out? Okay, opening up to general discussion. Okay, I'm going to lead it off with, just by the way, I believe it is tomorrow, CZU community meeting, Ready, Set, Go in Zone Haven. There's a meeting at 6:30. I did a search publicly. I didn't see it. However, that flyer has gone out fairly generously. So if there is, oh, actually, let me take that back. I'm going to post in the chat an announcement of that meeting. I may not be able to make it. I do have another meeting, but I think it would be very interesting. Who here, maybe just, wave, or you can activate your audio if you want to. Who here has seen a presentation on Zone Haven? Okay, yep. I think a few of you who have waved, I would be very surprised if you haven't seen some presentation on it. For those of you who haven't, I would say, let me ask the additional question. Who here used Zone Haven during the CZU fire to just see what zones have been evacuated? Okay. I think in the proceedings from this meeting, I'll include just a link to Zone Haven. In the meantime, in your chat, there is a link to the CAL FIRE CZU announcement of the community meeting. I recommend at least taking a look at that. Also, that account on Twitter is a great link to have saved. Whether it's a fire or evacuations, you'll want to know CAL FIRE CZU on twitter.com. Any other discussion? Let me ask, in the, do you have any recommendations on the recording that we sent out in January? For those of you who had a chance to look at the recording, does anybody have a response of if we do send out that type of material, how to make it better? I hear lots of silence. So another question. For our next meeting, normally we have scheduled general meetings quarterly. That would put us at July 5th. That is very near to the 4th holiday. My recommendation would be we postpone until July 12th, the second week. Any thoughts on the scheduling for the July meeting?
Good idea.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, we're going to move that question to our board meeting, but I'm going to put down a recommendation for July 12th. Let me ask, and we will follow up with a short survey if you don't mind completing it, if you have the time. What you would like to see in the future meetings. Also, if you have recommendations for the current meetings, how we might improve them. But let me just throw out the question. What did we discuss on this meeting or our process? Would you keep? What would you improve?
I like hearing the updates from people, the groups, the official, like Humane Society, large animal evac. I like hearing what's going on in progress.
Thank you, Shannon.
Hey, Mike, it's April. In the last few meetings, we've been talking about how the different groups can coordinate and communicate better together. Have any of the teams sort of brainstormed how we might be able to do that? It seems to be the biggest need currently that I'm hearing.
This is Chris. Clearly, the regular meetings where we're not on virtual meeting format, if there's just a period of time before the meeting starts where you can kind of mix it up and see your old friends, and as was said earlier tonight, get to meet the new people that you don't know. That my experience in the Red Cross is that it's very, very helpful. It couldn't be more helpful to do that, so that when you get out in the field and there's something going on, you may not remember the person's name, but they sure feel like they're your friends and have a common objective to us.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris.
This is Casey. April, I'm curious, are you thinking more of a tactical approach and question, or is that more a strategic goal planning question about communication?
So yes and yes. I'm getting some feedback on my line. Hang on. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so in general, I'm thinking first tactically, right? How do we accomplish that? Is this a virtual platform, a social platform, social media platform? What tools are out there that we can use to tie all the teams together? And secondly, in speaking to Chris's point, let's get to know each other. That's really hard to do right now. We're all virtual, but should the opportunity come up, or perhaps we create the opportunity, I think it'd be a great thing to do for the community.
So I just wanted to make a comment on tonight's format. It's kind of felt to me with some of the meetings that have been available, there's been some great content, some great presentations. I mean, if you look at what's being offered through CZU Fire, through CERT, through KEEP, and if we're looking for good content, there's quite a bit available. And I kind of wanted to have for tonight just some opportunity for general discussion in case we're not getting that at a few of the other meetings, and would love to hear what your thoughts are about that. I do have, by the way, a message here that tomorrow's event, the one that I mentioned about CZU Fire, is currently overbooked, and Chief Cosgrave this message is from Carrie, and I are trying to figure out how to stream it to Facebook. Basically, his account is allotted 500, and they have 567 people registered. So just, a thought, with the types of numbers that we're seeing of community participation, such as this event that's coming up tomorrow, with the response that we had for the the Great Shakeout in October, we're seeing record numbers, well beyond what we would have projected from pre-COVID. I think that's something that we just want to acknowledge, that even given the challenges, the communication, the sharing, the participation does seem to be way up. We allotted 90 minutes from this meeting, and I refuse to hold you hostage for an additional 30 minutes. I am sensing somewhat of a lull in the conversation. Is there anyone who feels like they really need to share and needs to keep us away from dinner any longer?
Dinner sounds good.
Without objection,
Okay,
I will be
sorry,
adjourning the meeting.
Mike?
Do we have any objection? Vic?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Any concerns with a fourth surge and how to respond better than we've did with the ones before, though we seem to be very lucky here on Half Moon Bay, and about rates of vaccination in our communities.
So I don't see anyone from County Health on the line, so I think I'd probably be the best equipped to answer that question. In regards to a fourth surge, we're monitoring all of these COVID metrics on a daily basis, really trying to make sure that we're ahead of the for lack of a better word for that word, so that we're ahead of the curve. What we haven't been seeing in this round of reopening, at least in San Mateo County, is a sharp jump in COVID cases. So if you remember back in November, the county was moved to the orange tier, the less restrictive tier, very, very briefly. A lot of California actually was moved into that. And then in January, we did see that really steep spike in cases. So far, since moving into the orange tier, we have seen a slight uptick in cases, but we haven't seen it in such a way where we feel that it's not controllable by our health department. One really important metric to look at, and if you want to take a look at it, I'll post a link to the actual county dashboard on the page as well. It's kind of the way we keep track of it. We look at those COVID hospitalizations, which is really, really critical to our ability to respond. But we're also looking at our testing rate, our positivity rate, and the R effective, kind of that R naught, how broadly our COVID cases are transferring. And for frame of reference, at the worst, our R naught was about 1.3, 1.4. And pretty steadily for the last 3.5 weeks, it's been below 1, which is exactly what you need to avoid that exponential growth. So with that in mind, kind of what we're doing on the county level at the EOC is monitoring that information, really making sure that we're collecting that and synthesizing that data before we see large spikes. And what we're also doing is really continuing to push those vaccinations out, because that's really what has allowed us to transition into these less restrictive tiers. And I'm going to ask you to repeat the second half of the question.
That was very, very nice, Mike. Thank you. Maybe I'll sleep better tonight. How about the variants in our area?
Yeah, so variants so far, all of the data that we've seen from the CDC show that the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine are effective against the variants. Just recently, the CDC put out in conjunction with Pfizer, findings that for the 6 months that they have data available, they've shown that the Pfizer vaccine is both.
Okay. Could you please repeat? I think what you were saying is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen is that the vaccinations that we have available to us, that would be Pfizer and Moderna predominantly. We have very little Johnson & Johnson available. What we've seen is that both Pfizer and Moderna are effective at least 6 months out. So that's all of the data that we have available to us based on vaccinations. And as far as we've been able to see, it's also effective against the variants.
Okay. How about the Brazilian variants, which are really scary?
Yeah, so that's all of the variants that we have available. We know in existence have been tested against this, and we've seen that they've been effective in reducing the severity of COVID-19 infections.
Awesome. I'm so happy at the end of my cul-de-sac.
Yeah, we're happy too. These are. It's a scary time, and knowing that there's a lot of different ways that this virus can mutate and infect, it does make it a little bit more anxiety inducing, because we are one mutation away from having, a variant that isn't protected from this vaccine. But so far, what we have seen is that they are protected. We've seen multiple mutations around the country that have spontaneously come to the same kind of conclusion, which is really interesting. I mean, I'm not by any means an epidemiologist or anything like that, so don't quote me on it. But from what we've seen, things are looking good with the vaccine in terms of variants.
Thank you.
I have one more question, Mike, on what you reported about R not being below 1, which is so encouraging. Does that, do you feel that there's adequate testing in our county to support that?
We've definitely seen a drop in testing. It hasn't been because we've reduced availability or access to it, but we have seen as our vaccinations have ticked up, the testing has also gone down. I don't think there's 100% overlap between the people who are getting tested and, let me rephrase that. I don't think there's an overlap between the people who've stopped getting tested and the people who are now vaccinated. But we are still in the lead in a lot of testing metrics. You know, we're testing thousands and thousands of people a day. In a perfect world, we'd be able to test every county resident every single day. But we do have a very robust testing strategy right now. We're offering tests at numerous locations, thousands and thousands of tests. So I think we're doing a good job getting out there and getting to people.
How about for testing for the different genomic variables and variants?
Yeah, so as far as I know, I can't speak to the very specifics of that. I believe that is all handled at the level. So the samples are collected locally and synthesized at the lab through the PCR test, and then they do genomic sequencing based off of that within their contact tracing to find genetically similar tests.
Thanks, Mike. That's really helpful.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad I could offer a little bit of insight to that. I do a lot of reading on this stuff too, so.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Vic. Thanks, Margaret. Anything else? Without objection, we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. The meeting is adjourned.